Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
All right, guys, and welcome back. I am here, and I'm so excited. By the way, I'm Casey Armstrong for PBN, and I have an amazing guest. I was so excited when they tapped me, and they told me that this gentleman would be here, and we could do this live on TV. Randy Swaim is here. Randy, I've been looking forward to this for a long time, man.
I'll tell you what, I'm humbled and honored, man.
So, Randy, let's tell the people just a little bit about your background and what you do. I mean, I referred to you as the Michael Jordan of leadership before, but if you could kind of just tell us a little bit about yourself and about the business that you're running.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, Randy Swaim obviously is my name, as he said, and most of my background in one way or another has been in aviation and in piloting airplanes, and I know what it's like to live your dream because I had an opportunity to be a fighter jock in F-4 Phantoms, which is a dream. I jokingly say when I got out of college that I only had two goals in life, so I bored every romantic relationship I ever had early on, because my goals were to fly the F-4 Phantom and to fly a Learjet, and I got a chance to do both of those, so I know what it's like to live your dreams. But my journey has also been one of overcoming. And my journey has truly developed insights on true leadership and what real leadership really is. And that really got me to the point where I became a certified executive coach, and I'm now a Marshall Goldsmith certified executive coach. And I gotta say I'm humbled because just this month I'm officially become a founding partner with ION, which is the Institute for Organizational Neuroscience. And I'm just humbled that they wanted me to do that. And
that's huge, Randy. Tell us more about what that is.
Neuroscience, really, when you're talking about developing true leadership in people or in your team,
right,
with you, the leader, you have to understand some aspects about how the brain works.
Okay.
Because if you're going to rote academic aspects, you're not getting it done. If you're leading your team to just go to their comfort zones, you're not getting it done. That's not where radical results happen. And so understanding certain aspects from a coaching perspective of how the brain works and how you really get people to dramatic, miraculous, and radical success. That's how amazing things happen.
Gotcha.
And so the neuroscience of understanding kind of how the brain works is a key part of that. Doesn't mean you have to be a master on all the academic aspects of it, but how you interact with your team and lead your team in a way that overcomes some of those things and makes use of some of the valuable pieces of it.
Okay, so Randy, so what about people who really don't know about leadership? And they would say probably there are two different ways I've heard that people who aren't as efficient or an expert in leadership. What would those two be? Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I'll just mention that because, and in fact, as you may know, Casey, it's one of the most recent posts on my website.
I got it from your blog. Yeah, that's where you came from.
But if you think about it, and in fact, on the last radio show, you remember the lady had a question, and one of the things that I mentioned was how the vast majority of managers that fail in today's world fail, and there's some things common. They've been in the industry for about 20 years, they're about 40 years old, and the big reason that they fail is because they got promoted to here because of their technical skills and expertise, but now they're moving into a point where the leadership is what's critical, and that hasn't been developed.
Okay.
And so if you think about this is one aspect, and I kind of wrote it, I printed out my blog just so I get the pronunciation of the words correctly. But what I tell people is there's a dysfunctional approach and a successful approach to leadership. And one is they both emanate from the Greek language because it's where we get a couple of our English words. The first one is the dysfunctional approach, and I'm just going to read it to you. It's hypocrisis. And I may have pronounced it slightly wrong, but that's basically the word. And it's defined as jealous, acting out, coward, dissembling, or play acting.
Oh.
You have some people out there that if all they do is they memorize a couple of rote academic factoids and then say they're leading, they're just on a stage play acting. They're not truly leading. And that word, by the way, is where we get the English word of hypocrisy and hypocrite.
Oh, all right, that makes sense.
So it's a key point.
It's like the guy that gets like the word of the day and tries to use that
Yes.
long word in a conversation, but you know he's not buying any of it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. Yep. But the true leadership insight comes from another word, and I hope I get the pronunciation perfect on it, but it's spelled correctly. It's enupokritos. And let me just kind of give you an idea on this. It's defined in Greek as unfeigned, without hypocrisy, upright, authentic, and legitimate. And if you think about it, very often in today's world, one of the biggest things that's lacking is leadership.
Yeah.
And one of the things, in fact, I think I shared on a radio show we did, the legend in the U.S. Navy. She had a 40-year career in the Navy. If you go into the Navy, most people know her name, Rear Admiral Grace Hopper. And she was a systems analyst, but she actually passed away, I think, around 1995 or something like that. But right at the point where she was retiring after 40, I think it was like a 42-year career in the Navy, 2020 actually did an interview with her about her career. And one of the things that the last questions that the interviewer asked her was, in your 40-year career, what has been the big difference that you've seen? And by the way, I'm not bad-mouthing the Navy. I'm from the Air Force, retired, and I applaud all my brothers and sisters in arms, past, present, and future.
Of course.
But I said, but she looked at him without missing a beat, and she said, we moved away from leadership and gone to strictly management. And she said, isn't that a shame?
Yeah.
And that's a part of what a lot of our society has done in a respect. So if you understand true leadership, miracles can happen. If you understand that leadership, I mean, we talked about the egg analogy.
Oh, you got to share that one. That's a great one.
The egg analogy is simply this. If you think about this, if you saw a bird's nest with an egg in it, if you came up to the egg and crushed it from the outside, death happens. But if the shell is cracked from the inside out, life happens, development happens, growth happens, success happens, destiny happens. And that's like leadership. Leadership isn't just putting your thumb on somebody's throat and forcing them. You know,
Right.
Leadership is developing within your team this aspect. And I could give you 100 military aspects of this oneness. But if you truly lead your team well, synergy happens, oneness happens, commitment happens, belief happens, the willingness to commit in challenging times happens, and radical results happen. So it's a key aspect of that.
I love that analogy, and I always love when you tell that. But tell me how you've taken what you've just said and what you just explained into coaching for relevance. Can you talk a little bit about coaching for relevance, and then I'm going to ask you about the younger team. But let's start with coaching for relevance. If you could tell the audience about that.
Well, I'll tell you, and you know, we shared on a radio show one time, and I won't go into it too much here, but because of my journey and my aviation background, when you look at what my real vision is, in fact, if you go to my website, you'll see it right on the front page. It's bringing freedom to potential in all those around me. And if you put that in pilot language, it's overcoming the gravitational forces that are holding you back.
I love that.
And if you think about it, if you or your team or individuals or your family members are going to get to their altitude, you got to overcome the gravitational forces that are holding them back. And sometimes that can be very insidious. It may be that they don't even realize it's holding them back.
Right.
But leadership, with what I do and with my coaching, my whole passion is to coach people in such a way that they overcome and they become and their team becomes. In fact, I will just share this quickly with you that one of my executive coaching clients was with Lexus. He was an executive with Lexus. And his boss hired me to coach him. But he was also if I remember correctly, I think it was a 2-star admiral in the Naval Reserve.
Okay.
And through the coaching, it was interesting because he had some interesting insights, not because of anything that I told him, but because of the questions that I asked, because he processed the questions. And on our last session, it was kind of interesting because he said, I got to share something with you. And I said, what's that? And he said, earlier this week, I had a meeting with our whole team, and my boss was there. And the boss was this very professional lady, very, very sharp and all this. And he said, it blew me away because he said, about halfway through the meeting, my boss lady stood up on her own and was going, and he said, I just looked at her like this because I didn't know what she was doing. And he said, and she looked at me, she pointed her finger at me, she said, that's what I've been looking for a long time. Because he was bringing it from a leadership standpoint and not just doing the thing. So so that's what I bring with my coaching. That's my vision, that's my passion. And as you know, that I've said on the radio show a number of times, and you said you've appreciated it, but you know, I don't care if 20 years down the road somebody does not remember my name, and they may remember my face a little bit, but if they remember that 25 years ago, there was one little moment where this person said something, did something, or whatever, and you know what? It was only a minute and a half, but you know what? I lived my life by it, and it changed my life. That's what I want. It's not about me. It's about what's left behind when you're gone through. And so that's what my company is all about. That's what I'm all about. Yeah. And that's what I want.
I can attest to that. I know that's true. I love when you say that. When you say, like, when people say, hey, you know, I may not remember this guy's name, but what he taught and what he said had a direct impact on me, on my life. Yeah. And I mean, that's got to feel pretty awesome.
And you know, I got to tell you, there's one guy that used to work for me back in the 90s. And he actually came up to me about 20 years later, and he actually told me that, because we were working for a different group, but for the same group. Or that's kind of stupid, for a different group, but we were working together, like we were before. Yeah. But he came up to me, he said, I don't think you realize this, Randy, but 15, 18 years ago, whenever it was, he said, you said this. And he said, I took it and I applied it to my life. And he said, it's made a difference.
That's awesome.
And when he said that, it was like, wow. So that's what it is for me. That's what I'm about. That's what my coaching is about. That's what my company is about. That's why I'm with you guys.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just passion that you have. It's just passion.
It's really to make that kind of a difference. That's the benefit is for other people.
Yeah, no doubt. And you have even taken this passion that you have, and you started working with teens. You started working with young people. Tell me about that.
Well, there's a group. There's a program that was actually created by a group that I'm involved in, which is called Trusted Advisors Network, and it's a program called Rising Stars, and it's it's amazing because youth, when they're coming up, and I'll give you one quick picture kind of thing of it, but if you can envision an executive leadership development program that is pared down to a 12 to 16-year-old could understand it, that is Rising Stars. And I'll give you two very quick pictures of it. There was a pastor's wife one time that there was this big function in our house and everything, and she was there, but she had at that time, I think it was like a 7-year-old son or something like this, an adopted son and everything, but he came exploding into the door, through the door and into the room, and she tried to calm him down and stop him, and she looked at me and she goes, oh, wow. She goes, he is so disobedient. He's always, and I said, would you be surprised if he's not? And she went, really? And I said, you got to realize that when at that typical age, what youth do is they're pressing the boundaries only because they want to get a sense of where the limit is. And I said, what if that's all he's doing? What if all he's doing is exploring to find the limit of that? And she looked at me and she went, wow, I never thought about that. And that young man is an amazing grown man now. He's got his own wife, own family, doing great and all that sort of stuff. And so that's one aspect of it, but there's just a number of aspects about that when you're working with teens, and I've shared this with you, that one time I was actually presenting the Rising Stars process to a group of youth in there, and one of the most impressive questions I've ever gotten, and I think I shared this with you before, was from this 9-year-old girl. And she was sitting right over here. And whenever I'm working with youth, I always have what we call an executive assistant with me, who is somebody that knows them, not part of me.
Okay.
And they were sitting next to me because I don't want to be just alone with the kids, because who knows what might be said.
Right, of course, yeah.
And but this little girl, little girls sometimes, when they really want to ask you something, they kind of sit there and they're going to like this kind of thing. And this little girl was like, she goes, and this one particular day, we were actually talking about legacy. We didn't use complex terms, but we were talking in their language about legacy and impact and all of that. And this little girl was going, I got a question. And she was going like this, and I looked at her and I said, what's your question? Listen to this question. She goes, this is from a 9-year-old girl. She said, do you have to be alive to have impact?
9-year-old.
A 9-year-old. And the executive assistant looked at me with his eyes this big around, and I looked at him, and I just kind of winked at him, and I looked at her. I said, young lady, you just have my compliments. Said, that's an amazing question.
It really is.
And I looked at the rest of the class, and I said, so what do you guys think? And there was one 12-year-old girl over on the other side that, not because of COVID or anything like this, because this was several years ago, but she lost her younger brother about 1.5 years prior to that. And she told that. And I said, well, let me ask you something. I said, don't share anything you're not comfortable with, but how does he affect your life today?
Right.
And she talked about her younger brother, about how much she thinks about him, how much she still loves him, and all of this. And I said, thank you. And I looked at the first little girl, and I said, so what's the answer to your question? And she looked at me like this. She goes, no, you don't have to be. I said, there you go. Awesome.
It's some story.
But that, when you're talking about the youth, so often people think it's just make them not do this. Well, you know what? That doesn't get them there. Right. And if you want them to truly become in their life, that's a different approach than a lot of people realize.
Oh, I'm glad you shared that one. And the other one that I always love is, you're able to see this in the youth. You even saw it in your granddaughter. Mm-hmm. Remember you were telling me the story about, I guess you guys were at a restaurant or something like that. That's maybe you can share that one too, if you don't mind.
And it don't mind at all. In fact, you remember one time, one of the questions we got on the radio show, one of the guys asked, is there a minimum age to which you talk about leadership?
Right, that's where we got this one out of you from that question.
And I said, you know what? No, I said, the bottom line is, if you're aware, you can see evidences very early on. And this is when my great-granddaughter was like, I think she was 4 years old or something like that at the time. And we were at a restaurant, and I got this picture on my computer table. And she was sitting on my lap while we were kind of eating and all this kind of stuff, and she was eating. But the picture shows I've got my hands on her waist here so she doesn't fall off, but I'm looking around like this, and she had her hand on the table and her hand on my shoulder, and she was looking around like this, and you see her looking over like that. The story behind it that people don't realize is that I asked her, I said, sweetie, what you looking at? Because I could tell she was looking for this, like this. And I said, sweetie, what are you looking at? And she looked at me, she goes, there's a baby crying. Oh. 4-year-old little girl is aware of a baby crying and wants to help.
That's awesome.
So this aspect of leadership is not just superficial. It's not just academic. It goes throughout. And it goes from early ages till we take our last breath.
Wow.
And that's my passion
you can tell.
For youth and for adults.
All right. Well, one of the things that we love, you really shine when you take questions from the audience.
Okay.
So my team picked a couple here for you.
Okay.
And
do I have to get an A?
Well, first you have Nick in Toronto.
Okay.
Nick wants to ask, how should a leader handle it if multiple team members complain about the same colleague but wish to remain anonymous?
That's a very valuable question. to Nick, and it can be a challenging question. Let me kind of say to begin with that as much as you hate to say it, it sort of depends on the situation.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, I shared on a radio show one time when I was the site manager and the contract rep at Griffiths Air Force Base, that a similar situation happened to me, and I'll just tell you kind of how I did it.
Okay.
What I did is I called the one person in, and I said, I want you to understand that I'm not making this documented as, speaking to you, but we need to have a conversation.
Yeah.
I said, because you're getting in the way of the team's success. Now, if they're overthinking something, okay, that could be an issue that you need to deal with them. But what I did, the first thing I did is I got together with the team apart from that guy. And I said, okay, tell me what your experience is. Tell me what you're thinking. And what I said is at the very end of it, I said, okay, I understand you. I will talk to him, but I want you to understand something. I said, I expect you guys to work with him. Now, yes, am I going to talk to him? Yeah, because it's the right thing to do.
Right.
But I expect you guys to work with him as he works with you. And what's amazing is I had the one-on-one conversation with him, and it blew him away that people were feeling that. But he changed the one thing that was making them feel that way.
Okay.
And what's amazing is I watched it over in fact, he came up to me a couple of days later and said, is there any way we can just not let the headquarters know about this? I said, nobody outside knows this except you and I.
Nice.
And I said, if it gets changed, that's all I care about.
Gotcha.
And he did, and you could see the synergy in the team come back almost that quick.
Wow.
It's brilliant. It's a good question, but that can come up. But in part, it has to be done wisely from the manager. It has to be done with a leadership approach, not a dictatorial approach. Now, if you get somebody that's sitting there trying to play control freak games, you may need to address that one very seriously and candidly.
Yeah. And that
but
goes
you need
along,
to know that.
Yeah, that goes along with one thing that you said to me, which I wanted to ask you about too, which was so great. You said if you ask a leader, what are you doing to be in the way? That I thought is something that I really want you to talk to the audience about what is a leader? If you're a leader, what are you doing to be in the way?
And you know what? It's a great question. Thank you for
well, no, you said it. I'm like a parrot,
Well, I appreciate you bringing it up, man, kind of thing. But I will say this: when you look at this aspect of the play acting versus being a true leader,
those great words
and
you talked
differences, about. When you look at those two, you've got to be aware. In some cases, what you're experiencing from your team may be something you are instilling, not them. And what are you modeling? In what ways are you getting in their way? In what ways are you causing a problem in them? What do you need to do differently for them to kind of experience and feel support? And those are aspects that a lot of people don't understand. That's a true aspect of the real leadership. As opposed to being the hypocrite or the play acting leader.
Right.
And those are insights that a leader has to have when they're observing their team. And there's times where you got to realize that, okay, right now is a good time to say this, to get this done. I may need to kind of approach this person. But there's times where you go, let's wait a second.
Yeah.
Let's watch. And in what ways are you letting your control freak stuff get in the way of their leadership and their ability to handle rapidly changing situations? Because let's face it, that's our business world out there these days. It's the unpredictable, rapidly changing environment, which is another big focus of where I coach. In what ways are you going with strictly academic mindset? And you're getting in the way of their ability to truly function. And to truly get the results that you want. So there's a lot of aspects to that for sure, but it's a key aspect.
And a lot of that you think has to do with leaving that ego outside sometimes.
You know what? If you do it right, if you go with true leadership, you don't need your ego. Because you know what? Your team is going to make you sense that.
Right.
And that doesn't come from you and your arrogance. That comes from them.
Got it.
And so yeah, it goes back to that egg analogy.
Right.
Yeah,
I love you. Yeah.
Yeah, so it is key though. But yeah, one lady asked, "Does the leader need to leave the ego at the door?" Yep, every time, because it ain't about you.
Right.
It's about the team. Yeah.
All right. So we have Lisa in Denver. Does making a decision to protect their own job instead of making a decision for the benefit of the team show bad leadership?
You know what? And as much as I hate to say it, it sort of depends on the situation.
Okay. Yeah.
But
Okay.
are there times when you need to do that? And I would say yes. There are times when you kind of need to be willing to lead up to protect your team. And I shared this story with you when I was up at the 107 Fighter Group up at Niagara Falls, and the guy that was the wing commander at the time, his call sign was Watash. That was his nickname, Doug Rout. And but I'll tell you, we were doing a deployment exercise, and one of the things that the inspectors would do is rope out the area of a C-141 cargo hold. And you had to show that everything that you would take could fit into that kind of thing. And they had done this, but everything was there except the rear view mirror on the soft truck was sticking out beyond the rope. And the inspection team was going crazy with it.
Uh-huh.
Well, Colonel Rout just happened to be walking by our area, and he heard all this going on over there. And he walked over, he said, "Gentlemen, what's the problem?" And the inspector guy goes, "Well, this is not, this ain't going to work. It isn't satisfactory." He said, "This doesn't work." And what was funny about it was that Doug Rout, without missing a beat, he turned around and slammed the back of the rearview mirror with his hand, and it went crunch, and it shattered. And he looked around at the inspector, and he goes, "Does now." And so the answer to that, are there times where you've got to deal with your people and how they're being dysfunctional somewhat? Yep, there are. Yeah. But are there times when you got to lead up? Are there times when you've got to stand in the gap for your people? Are there times when you got to put your job at risk to stand for something that's ethical?
Right.
There is.
Yeah.
And are you willing to do that? And that is a huge aspect of this. Now, with some situations that could arise, the leader has to understand there may be a little bit of a dovetail of both of those in there. But the executive client at Alexis, when I was talking to him, in one of the last coaching sessions he had, it was kind of interesting because he said, I was asking him how the week went, and he was telling me, and he said, "I realized that I should have done something about a year ago." And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "I should have just stood on the bridge and kind of made it look like I had a rope around my neck and went." What he was saying was there was a time that he became aware of where he should have stood in the gap for his people.
Got it.
And I kind of went like this. I said, "You know what? That's cool." And you can do that in a way that's ethical and professional, and you can do a way that's unethical and not professional.
Right.
As a leader, do you have clarity on it? Because you know what? Leaders do.
Yes. Got it.
So good question.
Thank you, Lisa. Great question, Lisa from Denver. Actually, do I have time for more questions? Okay, great. All right, so let's go. Steve in Detroit. Steve wants to know, does it take a good leader to launch, does it take a good leader to vouch for a member of their team if another company or department is looking to bring them in?
You know what? It to a certain extent, that's something that needs to be done prior to the aspect
get to that.
Coming up to them.
Okay.
And you got to realize one of the things that I think about. In fact, on my YouTube channel, I have one of the videos that I have is the 3 P's of true leadership, and it's
3 P's of leadership. Okay, let's. I want to hear about this.
It's proficient,
okay,
professional, and proactive.
Okay.
So many people in today's world think reactively. I'll just wait until something happens, then I'll choose. Okay, I should do this. Okay, if it didn't work, that's that fault. But true leaders are proactive. They think ahead. They see higher. They see deeper than others think. And so when you're talking about that, at what point does it make this person look like they want to do that? And is there something that you're doing that makes them want to do that? Now, I will tell you that is it going to be possible that there are times when somebody on your team has been so developed that another part of your organization wants them to move over here? Yeah. Can that be beneficial for the organization? Yeah.
How so?
Well, it depends on what it is, to be honest with you.
Okay.
For instance, like in my role, where you're talking about developing and training and certifying pilots and things like that, you may have somebody that's a good instructor but shows great insight, and perhaps they would like them to maybe move into instructor development, or they may want them to move into regulatory compliance because of their background, because of their stuff that's been developed in their teamwork aspects and things like that. It may be somebody that they want to move up to a management position.
Right.
And that can be beneficial for them.
Mm-hmm.
But what does that mean for you as a leader? What it means for is you can't just have everybody right here for the rest of your life, because they have a career, a destiny, and journey as well.
Yeah.
So when they leave, have you been developing the rest of your team?
Yeah.
So that they can handle that? Is there somebody else on your team that can kind of take over sort of what they had been doing? And so that, when we go back to this aspect of the dysfunctional approach or the true leadership approach, true leaders understand that. It's not just about sitting there going like this and saying, well, he left. Well, what? That's not leadership.
Right. Right.
Leadership is in developing your team, noticing that true development may take people up.
Gotcha.
And you know what? That's okay. Are you bringing other people in? Are you developing your team so that when somebody new comes in, they can be developed quickly because of how your team has been developed and because of what you're doing?
Okay.
And if you can do that, then you set this kind of river flow to your organization that's a benefit to your organization. And your team looks like one that says, you know what, these develop people good. We need to look at what they're doing. Boy, let's talk to this guy.
Yeah.
And find out what you're doing. So it's a great question there, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot associated with that. But realize that, to develop your team so that when those things happen, like we said, in today's world out there, it's the organizational maneuverability concept. Things are rapidly changing.
Yeah.
They're unpredictable sometimes because guess what? Opportunities do arrive.
Yeah.
And if somebody goes to this other position, are you ready for that? Can you handle that? Have you been developing your team so they can handle that when something happens?
So be ready for it.
Now, if you've got 10 people on your team and 8 of them want to go, okay, you got a problem. And you know what? Half of that problem may be you.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So it's a great question.
Yeah. Steve, great job. Great question. You mentioned before about your YouTube channel. Can you tell people about the YouTube channel and everything that you got going on?
Yeah, it's just a very simple YouTube channel. What I do is I've got a program. In fact, it's an e-learning course, a level 1 and level 2. And I do it as something that can be kind of a coaching approach as we go through it. But it's a e-learning course. It's called Organizational Maneuverability, and it's trademarked for me out of Washington. But it's, what it does is it takes pilot lessons. Of course, when you're talking about being a pilot flying, things are not always as you would expect. Weather happens, other airplanes happen, particularly when you're talking about military pilots. Guess what? Combat happens.
Right.
A lot of things that you can't predict happen. And what it does is it takes pilot lessons and applies them to leading teams in a rapidly changing, unstable environment, and which is today's world right now, kind of thing. And if all you're doing is going along with the academic thoughts, you're not preparing yourself. You're not preparing your team for success.
Right.
But the YouTube channel simply takes that aspect and that picture and brings it into a short video. And I think the longest video I have is 10 minutes.
Okay.
Because you'll notice a lot of videos that people put out there today in today's world, they'll go about 45 minutes and spend 39 point whatever minutes talking about themselves or whatever. I don't. What I do is I just give you an idea. I do it from a coaching perspective.
Right.
I give them a basic insight from maybe something that happened, maybe a picture, maybe whatever. And then I say, look around your organization and see what you see this week.
Gotcha.
What do you see in light of that? And the organizational maneuverability concept, that is what that's kind of built around, focuses on one of the questions that I kind of throw out to people is your organization have a transport mindset where it's like transport airplanes, you take off, you just have all this stuff, cargo back there, and you just fly straight and level to that point and land?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you have a maneuver mindset? And when you look at your team, do you have a transport mindset, which may be totally academic?
Okay.
Or do you have a maneuver mindset, which means when things happen, I can kind of turn, I can adjust, I can adapt.
You pivot, yeah.
And reach success.
Gotcha.
And so that's the essence of the YouTube channel. But like I said, my goal is to use it as a coaching perspective, where I don't just tell you to do this and this and this. I give an idea, an insight, and then I say, in a rapidly changing environment, look around your organization and kind of what do you see?
That's pretty awesome. That's pretty
so
awesome.
it's a little bit of a different mindset on it.
One thing I wanted to bring up is you have these two planes here on your lapel here.
Okay.
It's pretty cool. Can you tell me the story behind those?
Yeah. What it is these are just a couple of little pins that were given to me for the two airplanes, because as you know, for the last actually 23 years now, I've been training and certifying pilots and also coaching and mentoring new instructor pilots in aviation. And it's been oriented around basically two airplanes, the Learjet and the Challenger 601. They're both a little bit older airplanes, but these are just two of the pins from it. So it just kind of reflects that.
Awesome. Guys, I am here with the one and only Randy Swaim, and you did not disappoint. I love the stories. I love your passion. You have a passion about leadership, and that's why I call you the Michael Jordan of leadership.
Even though I'm not the Michael Jordan of basketball.
Well, should I do more questions, or I can do one more? Okay, great. All right, so we let's see.
Hard question, right?
Yeah. Did I do Nick? Okay, I don't think I did Nick. So, Nick in Toronto, how should a leader handle it if multiple team members complain about the same colleague? We did that one. Yes, we did that one. Okay, so I did my question. So now let me ask you one of my own.
Okay.
What part of leadership, and I know you get this all the time, and you're gonna hate it, but I know they want me to ask it.
Okay.
All right. What part of leadership is taught, and what part of leadership is born? You saw it in your granddaughter.
Yeah.
You saw that part being born, but I have to give you that question.
Yeah.
I know you think it's lame, but I got to ask for them.
Actually, it isn't. In fact, I shared with you a little bit earlier about the greatest leader I've ever served.
Yeah.
And I'll share that. I will tell you this, that leaders are not born. They are created.
Okay.
But I will say this, that true leadership is not just taught, it's caught. And I love that phrase. And I will tell you this, that the greatest leader that I have ever served with, you may remember the name because from 2001 to 2005, he was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Richard B. Myers. And he retired and went on to be a senior person at a university in either Tennessee or Kentucky. I don't remember exactly what.
Okay.
I don't know whether he's still alive or not, but if he is, I hope maybe somebody in his family may hear this or whatever. But he was a squadron commander at the 4th Staff Fighter Wing when I was there, and he and I flew together many times. And we flew together at Red Flag war games at least once or twice. And to this day, I will stand up and say he is the finest leader I have ever met.
Coming from you.
And the reason I say that, there's nothing that he told me about leadership that I learned, but I learned about leadership from watching, from observing, from processing, from looking at the reaction of the squadron mate, how people responded to him, and that's where I learned and I caught what true leadership was from my several years serving with him. And I'll tell you, I will just kind of share this as a touch of humor, but it's true. The last time I ever heard anything about him is when he pinned on his first general star as a brigadier general. But it was around 2001, I think it was, when I was driving my car to the car wash, and the radio was on, and the news, whatever, said, and for the first time it may have been in history, I don't remember. He said, for the first time, he said, a Air Force general has been appointed as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And I went, really? And he said, General Richard B. Myers. And I went, whoa! And I got to the car wash, and I, gave my car to him, and I exploded into the lounge area. And there was a newsstand over there, and I went over the newsstand. I picked up, and there was this picture right on the front page. And I went,
no way.
I said, sir, awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. But the bottom line is those aspects don't come from what you tell people. Those aspects and the results of true leadership comes from experience. Comes from how you experience people. And I could give you a whole other slew of examples on that with him. But leadership is caught more than it's taught.
Okay.
And leaders are not born; leaders are developed.
Yeah.
And once they, and I will say this, that my great granddaughter got a couple of insights of real leadership in there from the standpoint of how that all sort of worked as she grew up with the people that she was with and everything.
Yeah.
And she's got leadership right from the get-go on her. It's amazing. And so it's just, like I say, leadership from the granddaughter. I've seen some examples of that throughout her whole life, amazingly. In fact, one little subtle one was when they lived with me for 3 years, and she was like 3 and 4 years old. Sometimes I'd come home from work later, so I'd have like a sandwich, Subway sandwich or something in the bag for my dinner. And I'd walk in, and every time I walked in, she'd come running over there and give me a hug, and she'd go, can I share your sandwich? And what I realized is with her, a big part of who she is, and it's an aspect of her leadership that's developing, is this aspect of connecting together. And I realized that was some evidence of that. That cool. At age 3 years old was starting to develop.
That's pretty cool.
And so there's aspects of that are huge, and a lot of that it's been amazing to see some elements of that in my granddaughter as she's growing over. And I mean, she's 12 years now, so 12 years old now. If you think about it, she's just under. She's about 5 years from getting her driver's license.
Oh no!
And I'm sitting there going, "Oh, how does she get to be 12 years old?" Kind of thing. But you know what? Leaders are not born, and that's what a lot of people say.
Right.
If you go with the hypocrisy aspect of it, you can say, "Well, I was born a leader." Well, no, nobody was born a leader. Leaders are developed. Leadership is caught. It's because of who you become, not because of what you were born at.
Right.
It's who you became through the journey. And you do that, and if you allow that to take place in your life, in your development, I mean, miraculous things can happen. And people will notice you for what you are. People will notice you not because you tried to sell yourself, but because of how they experience.
Yeah. And
you'll find people responding in ways, and I could give you another half an hour of events in my life. People will respond to you in ways that, boy, you never asked them for it, but holy cow, wow, kind of thing. Because the experience is different, and that's the true leadership.
Great answer.
So it's just something to think about.
Well, I got to tell you, I have enjoyed this time with you, as I always do on the radio. I'm glad that you came, but I want to give you the floor here. If there's any story, or if there's anything you want to impart on us, anything we didn't kind of go over, I want to give you the time to do that, because thank you to everyone who wrote in, and you did such a great job, and
Thanks.
It's great picking your brain.
Thanks.
I'm sure everyone agrees with me, but I wanted to give you the last word. So anything that you didn't get to talk about, or anything that's on your mind while we got you here. Let's get it down. So,
Okay.
anything that you
Well,
want to impart?
I'll just share this two quick things here with you,
Okay.
because like you asked about like a story or something that kind of illustrates
Yeah.
this. I mentioned just previously, just a minute ago, I mentioned that you'll get results that you would have never expected.
Yeah.
Not because you manipulated or negotiated, but just because of who you are. And remember when I went back to college, and I think I shared this on the radio show one time, when you went back to college, there was a
test?
there was a test, but bottom line is my parents could not afford really the college. One thing I do give my mother credit for is that she worked her neck off to get me through college.
Okay.
But I went in, and the first semester I filled out, and by the way, it was about 4 years after I graduated. Actually, yeah, about 4 years after I graduated from high school. And I was first semester I was filling out scholarship paperwork for ROTC because I knew I wanted to be commissioned and go in the military. And what's amazing is that the tech sergeant of the whole operation here kind of looked over my shoulder, and he saw my birthday, and he said, "Is that your birthday?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" And he said, "You realize that to fly in the military, you got to be graduating by your 25th birthday, don't you know it?" And that was 3.5 years away. And by the way, I'm getting my degree in applied math and physics. And I'm here to tell you, for 3.5 years, I averaged 18 to 21 credit hours every semester.
Wow.
All of that kind of stuff. Went to every summer school session I could. And I'll tell you, at the end of 3.5 years, I had nothing left. Nothing left. And it came up to the last summer session, and I think I was, if I remember correctly, I think I was 4 credit hours short of graduating. So it was the last summer session. I took a physics course that I thought I could do well in, and I got a B in it.
Okay.
And I took a graduate level imaginary calculus course, which is a calculus course that deals with things like electricity, AC power, and pendulum motion and things like that. And I struggled with that just a little bit. Well, the final exam was on, and by the way, the professor on that was a professor that had a reputation across NC State that he didn't curve anything. You got what you deserved.
Okay.
And the final exam was on a Monday. And I mean, like I said, I had nothing left on all of this. And my 25th birthday was on Friday. And I figured that I got either a C or D on the final exam because, like I said, I just had nothing left, kind of thing.
Right.
If I got a D, all dreams were toast and dead.
That's incredible.
If I got a C, I graduated and everything came true.
Everything's all right.
Well, on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I went over to, at the time, Harrelson Hall. That's not there anymore. But at the time, Harrelson Hall, which is where his office was, and at no point in those days were any of the grades posted. Well, I went on Thursday, and my Friday is my 25th birthday.
It's your birthday.
On Thursday, I went over there about 7 times. And the last time was about 5:45 in the afternoon. And all the lights in Harrelson Hall were shut off. And I walked up to the professor's door. The door's locked, the lights are off, and no grades posted. And my whole head hit my chin like this, and I went, what do I do now?
Right.
What do I do now? About 5 seconds after I heard those words come out of my mouth, and it's just something I spontaneously said. It's not something I mentally thought.
Yeah.
But about 5 seconds after that, I heard a sound up the hall. And who came around the corner but this professor? And he walked right up to his office. He said, "May I help you?" And I said, "Sir." Now, most people in today's world would try to manipulate him or negotiate with him. I didn't do that. This is exactly how I approached it. I looked at him and I said, because I knew he had a reputation for not curving anything.
Yeah.
I said, "Sir, I'm Randy. I'm in your Math 501 class." I said, "I'm just wondering if you had the
Scores.
the final exams graded."
Yeah.
And I said, and he said, "No, I don't have them graded yet. I'll probably try to get those graded this weekend." And I said, "Sir, listen, I'm not asking for anything that don't deserve."
Yeah.
And I said, "But here's what I got going. and I need to be graduating tomorrow. And I said, is there any way I can just get you to grade mine real quick before you go home? Because I just need to know. And this professor, when I get ready to take my last breath, one of the things that I will remember is the look in his eyes. Because this professor locked eyes with me, and I was telling him, going in the Air Force flying and all this sort of stuff. That's what I hope to do. And he looked at me like this, eyes connected.
Yeah.
And it was that way for probably about 8 seconds. And then I saw his head do this. And he looked at me, and this is his exact quote. He said, if you have plans like that, I will give you a seat. I said, sir? He said, I will give you a seat.
That is awesome.
I shook his hand and said, sir, thank you. I said, I appreciate that. I called the detachment. I said, I'm graduating tomorrow. Give me commission. And on my 25th birthday, my sister and my mother pinned second lieutenant bars on my shoulder. And I took the oath of commissioning. And but the bottom line is, and it's interesting because when I went to F4 training, I was the outstanding WISO graduate of Class 81 ABG at George Air Force Base. And when they called Lieutenant Swaim's name out to be the outstanding graduate award winner, I just about spit my wine all over the table because I was so shocked. But I went up there, and nobody realizes this. They probably will if they hear this, kind of thing. But while I stood up there and the squadron commander was talking about why I was selected for that, everything in my attention, in my mind, was sort of looking up, and I had that picture of that professor's face. And the only thing in my mind was, Professor, this is for you.
Awesome.
And but that is a picture, like I said, of if you truly understand aspects of leadership and the behavior and that breaking the shell from the inside out, not from the outside in, and all of this, amazing things can happen that you would never recognize.
That's awesome.
And that's just the story of one little aspect of a lot of my overcoming journey. So it's just been a pleasure, and been a pleasure working with you. I definitely hope we can work together some more, brother.
And the pleasure was all mine, and I love that you finished with that story. I love that story, and it's been such a pleasure, man. One more time, could you just tell people how they get a hold of you and what you got going on?
Okay. Well, you can check me out with Randy Swaim at Coaching for Relevance. My website, coachingforrelevance.com. You can get my contact information. You can get my phone number there. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and all that. And I will say this, that anybody that gives me, one of the things that I've said when I started my company was that I'm not going to do these cold call sales calls. And so if you do call me, it's a connection between two people. If there's something that you have a need for that I can help with, yeah, we can come up with something. But I don't go out and do a lot of sales calls. My thing is to build relationships with people, and a lot of those people might need something, and so be it. So if you do, you can call me, you can send me an email, and I'll be glad to respond and connect.
Guys, that is the one and only Randy Swaim. I'm so glad he was here for PBN. I'm Casey Armstrong. Thank you for joining us.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.